Welcome to the Real Shift. And I'm your host, Ro, asking you to roll with me. Today, we're going to cover a few topics, crunch it into a 15-minute video for you, so it's not too much. I appreciate it if you can watch the whole thing through because there's a lot of good information in there. Without further ado, we don't really have much to say about anything. We'll let you get to it. So, we're about to get to it. Just don't mind us.
The world is doing a big shuffle. Um, it's like one of those moments in a movie where the music gets all tense, and you know something is about to go down. Countries are picking new teams, almost like it's a global schoolyard draft. Old alliances are creaking under pressure. New handshakes are happening in rooms most of us will never see. The big players are moving their pieces across the board, and those pieces are things like giant containers of oil, super fast missiles, stacks of money that aren't green anymore. It's a global power shift, and it's happening right now, whether we're paying attention or not. This isn't just about politicians in fancy suits making speeches. First up on our world tour of things to worry about, Venezuela. For a long time, if you wanted to buy oil on the world market, you needed US dollars. The dollar was the king, the boss of global energy trade. But Venezuela, sitting on one of the world's largest oil reserves, just switched tables. They've signed a massive deal to sell oil for Chinese yuan instead of dollars. This is not a small change. It's like saying the World Cup will now be played with a basketball. The deal is a lifeline for Venezuela's struggling economy. It's also a strategic power play. China isn't just buying oil. It's investing billions to fix Venezuela's broken oil industry. And they're not coming alone. Russia is part of this new club. For Venezuela, new powerful friends who don't care about US sanctions. For China, securing energy. For Russia, challenging America's financial dominance. Every barrel sold in yuan chips away at the dollar's global empire. The power of the US dollar is a main reason America is a superpower. It lets the US borrow cheaply and impose powerful sanctions. That could affect interest rates on your mortgage and the value of your savings. Venezuela's move, backed by China and Russia, is a clear signal, a declaration of a new economic bloc. Right after Venezuela announced its new oil for yuan plan, things got tense on the high seas. Imagine a massive Chinese oil tanker, the size of a skyscraper, chugging through the Caribbean. Suddenly, it's approached by a U.S. naval vessel. The U.S. Navy stops the tanker, claiming it was violating international maritime sanctions. From the American perspective, they were just upholding the law. They believed the ship was part of a deal designed to sidestep global financial regulations and to support an unfriendly government. It was a routine enforcement action, a cop on the beat. But from the other side, it looked very different. Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, went on television and was furious. He called the action an act of piracy, accusing the United States of stealing their oil on the open ocean. China's foreign ministry issued a stern statement, warning against actions that disrupt normal trade. For China, this wasn't about rules. It was a direct physical challenge. It looked like America using military might to interfere with a business deal between sovereign nations. The message was clear. If you try to trade outside our system, we can and will stop you. This incident shows how quickly economic disagreements can turn into military confrontations. It's a perfect example of money and muscle. The next, you have warships and tankers in a standoff that could easily escalate. These moments are incredibly dangerous because a single miscalculation, a single wrong move from a ship's captain on either side, could spark a much larger conflict. While tensions are rising at sea, there's a heated debate happening on land about Russia. How big of a threat is it really? On one side of the argument, leaders in Washington and across Europe, they point to the ongoing war in Ukraine and warn that Russia has ambitions to expand further. They see a pattern of aggression and believe that if they don't stand up to Moscow now, It will only be a matter of time before another European country is in the crosshairs. For them, the threat is real. It is urgent, and it requires a massive military buildup to deter it. But then there's another point of view, and it's getting louder. Some analysts and political figures are pushing back. For example, former U.S. presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard recently stated that the constant warnings about an imminent Russian invasion of NATO countries are creating a fear-based narrative. She argues that this kind of alarmism primarily benefits the defense industry, which makes billions from selling more weapons. According to this view, Russia, while aggressive, is economically stretched thin by the war in Ukraine and militarily stretched thin. It simply doesn't have the capacity for a wider conflict with NATO. This division in opinion is crucial because it directly influences policy. If you believe Russia is an existential threat on the verge of attacking, your answer is more tanks, more jets, and more soldiers on the border. You pour billions into defense spending. This is the peace through strength argument. On the other hand, if you believe the threat is being overblown, you call for de-escalation, for diplomacy, and for spending that money on domestic needs like healthcare or infrastructure instead of on more weapons. This perspective cautions that creating a climate of fear can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just as this debate was heating up, Moscow added a very big, very fast exclamation point to the conversation. Russia announced it had deployed the avant-garde hypersonic system in Kaliningrad, Poland, Lithuania, right on the doorstep of the European Union. A hypersonic missile isn't just any missile. It travels at over 5 times the speed of sound. It can maneuver in flight, making it almost impossible for current missile defenses to intercept. This is a game changer, terrifying. From Kaliningrad, these missiles could strike major European capitals in minutes. Berlin, Warsaw, Stockholm. The warning time would be practically zero. Russia noted these missiles are nuclear capable. It's a loaded gun on the table during a tense negotiation, a direct challenge to NATO's military superiority in Europe. Decades of security under the American military umbrella. That comfort is shattered. The threat of war feels immediate and personal. It pushes governments to rethink defense and spend more on militaries, creating a new arms race on the continent. Russia deploys a new weapon because it feels threatened by NATO's eastward expansion. Europe responds by spending billions on defense. Each side sees its moves as defensive and the others as aggressive. This cycle of action and reaction fuels conflicts. The risk of a catastrophic mistake grows with every new missile off the assembly line. The German government, feeling the heat from Russia's new missile and the ongoing war in Ukraine, responded exactly as you might expect. They proposed a new defense-first policy. The plan was a major shift for a country historically cautious since World War II. It involved a massive increase in defense spending and talks about reintroducing compulsory national service. Every young person might have to undergo a security check, be available for military roles, or serve in civil defense during a crisis. The government said it was necessary to protect the nation, but many German citizens disagreed. In Berlin, tens of thousands flooded the streets to protest. The crowds were full of young people, students, and families. They carried signs, "Diplomacy, not drills. Schools, not soldiers." They didn't want tax money spent on tanks and missiles. They wanted investment in education, healthcare, and fighting climate change. They feared this focus on defense would push Germany and Europe toward more conflict. The protests revealed a deep societal split. Governments saw military strength as logical, while many citizens prioritized peace and prosperity. The government had to listen. Lawmakers watered down the proposal. They passed a more moderate defense budget and softened compulsory service checks. But protests continued. The underlying fear remained. In the global chess game, the pawns, the citizens, sometimes refuse to move. While politicians debated missiles and military budgets, another kind of battle was raging in the streets of Brussels, the heart of the European Union. This time, the weapons weren't hypersonic, they were tractors. Thousands of angry farmers from across Europe drove their tractors into the city, deliberately blocking major roads and bringing the capital to a standstill. They weren't protesting a war, they were protesting a trade deal. Specifically, they were furious about a pending agreement with the Mercosur bloc of South American countries, which would allow cheaper beef, grain, and sugar to be imported into Europe. For the farmers, this trade deal felt like a death sentence. They argued that they couldn't possibly compete with agricultural giants like Brazil and Argentina, where environmental regulations and labor standards are much lower. They felt betrayed by their own leaders, who they believed were sacrificing their livelihoods for the sake of a geopolitical agreement. So they fought back in the only way they knew how. They dumped piles of potatoes in front of government buildings, lit bonfires in the streets, and used their massive farm equipment to create a blockade that EU leaders literally could not ignore. This chaos shows how big, abstract geopolitical decisions have very real, very personal consequences. The protests became so disruptive that a major EU summit had to be delayed, and police in riot gear were called in. The city was a mess, but the farmers had made their point. When countries are focused on big power rivalries, they often make trade deals as strategic moves in that game. But these deals can create winners and losers at home. If the losers, in this case the farmers, feel ignored and pushed to the brink, they will resist. And then there is Ukraine. The war there is not a separate story. It's the central hub that connects all these other spokes of tension. Every other event we've discussed is either a cause or a consequence of this brutal, ongoing conflict. Recently, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued another desperate plea to his Western allies. He warned intelligence suggested Russia was digging in for a long, grinding war of attrition. Without a significant increase in military aid, more ammunition, more air defense systems, more long-range weapons, his country's ability to hold the line was in jeopardy. The war in Ukraine is the ultimate real-world test of all the theories and strategies we've talked about. It's where the debate over Russia's threat is no longer a debate. It's a daily reality of bombs and drones. It's where the need for weapons is not a budget line item, but a matter of life and death. The conflict has become a massive drain on resources for both Russia and the West. It has reconfigured energy markets, forcing Europe to find alternatives to Russian gas. It has accelerated the formation of the Russia-China-Venezuela axis. The war makes Russia more reliant on partners like China, encouraging deals like the oil for yuan agreement in Venezuela. That deal prompts responses from the US, for example, stopping a tanker. Moscow's posture leads it to deploy weapons like hypersonic missiles in Kaliningrad. That move spooks Germany and prompts a defense spending debate which spills into citizen protests in Berlin. The war also disrupts global food supplies, influencing trade deals and sending farmers into the streets of Brussels. It's all one interconnected story. Ukraine is the stage where the consequences of this global power shift are written in blood and rubble. The calls for help from Kiev are not just pleas for one country's survival, they are a painful reminder of what is at stake for everyone. So, let's step back and look at the whole picture. It's not just a random collection of bad news, it's a chain reaction. One event directly triggers the next. Venezuela, Russia, China. They create an oil trading hub that bypasses the US dollar, a direct challenge to American financial power. That makes the US more likely to use military power to enforce its rules, which leads to incidents like the seizure of a Chinese tanker. That action deepens the mistrust. It pushes those three countries even closer together, reinforcing an anti-Western alliance. At the same time, the war in Ukraine serves as a massive catalyst. It gives Russia a reason to show off its military strength with new weapons like hypersonic missiles. To deter further NATO involvement, This show of force terrifies its European neighbors, pushing a historically pacifist country like Germany to dramatically increase its defense budget. It sparks fear and resistance from its own citizens. This internal division weakens a government's ability to act decisively. The economic fallout spreads everywhere. Pressures of war and shifting alliances lead to new strategic trade deals. But these deals have real impacts on ordinary people, like the farmers in Brussels. When their livelihoods are threatened, they protest. Causing chaos at home and showing plans can be derailed by a few thousand tractors. Every single one of these events, a tanker at sea, to a protest in a city square, is a link in the same global chain. But seeing the connections doesn't have to lead to despair. It can also show us where to find solutions. If the problem is a chain reaction of fear and aggression, the solution is to break the chain. This begins with simple, honest communication. Leaders need to talk to each other to de-escalate tensions. We need clear, enforceable international rules for trade, and clear rules for maritime conduct. Governments must listen to and support their own people. When citizens feel secure and heard, they are less likely to be swayed by fear.
And as you can see, things are heating up everywhere. Tankers are being seized. This is the second one the U.S. has seized. First it was for drugs. Now no more blowing up of boats for drugs. Now it's just seizing oil. So what is it really about? OIL. It's about oil. And on top of that, while all this is happening, Venezuela made a move to stop using the dollar so they can actually start feeding his people. So that makes a lot of sense, where one person is neglecting Damn, wow, wow. The second one will help you. And once you understand that things are happening in a manner, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And while you got one side aggressive with a lot of aggression, I mean, they can't get nowhere with that. They say you get further with honey than lemons. So, well, that's a wrap on today's The Real Shift. We worse, where we serve real news with just enough humor to keep it from being too scary. From Venezuela's new oil club making the U.S. go, wait, what? To Russia's speedy missile saying back off. And Europeans yelling no more war spending. It's clear the world's puzzle pieces are moving big time. One thing's for sure. In this crazy game, nobody's winning a quiet life award. Stay curious, stay safe, and join us next time for more shifts. Thanks for watching. See you soon. English.